I'd say it would be a hard ask to get a co-sponsor, but you might as well ask. Yeah.
Is there a House companion for that bill?
No, there isn't. So the two tax incentive bills that we see for higher education don't come close to the amount of changes that this would make, but Grassley's done stuff like this before for higher education, so it might end up being moved, maybe not this session, but maybe next session, for all the stuff that doesn't get addressed. But if we can get the House bills through, a lot of the stuff will be knocked off in this bill. Yeah.
Who are the leads of the two House bills?
The two House bills, one is Higgins, 5078, and the other one's Pomeroy.
Okay.
Congressional information, well, here it is. So you have the same information on your sheet. This is just a more concise version. Your introduction date, how many co-sponsors, who actually introduced it, you know, what they are, Democrat, Republican. And if you look at the co-sponsor list of the various bills, you'll see that some of them appear to be kind of partisan, but you don't want to say that unless they really expressly ask, I guess. I mean, we don't want to peg any of these bills as partisan, and they're really not. Everybody supports higher education incentives, and from all the meetings that we've had, really, the FERPA is highly supported too, because it increases government transparency and access to research that taxpayers are already paying for. So it makes sense to everybody. So that's the basic information. And talking points, I mean, the big talking point you can mention is the amount of loans, the average debt load for undergraduates and graduates. I mean, that's always a good figure to throw out there. And talking about the different associations and universities that support the various bills. So NAICU is one of the big associations that helped introduce 5078 in working with Higgins. And SAGE is another graduate student organization that supports it. And you definitely want to kind of drum up that so that you have all these, they get a good idea of who's actually dealing with the bill right now. Also, the same thing goes with 5078. There's actually a coalition to preserve employer-provided education assistance. There's a link on the back of the leave behinds that you'll get. And you guys can check that out maybe tonight, and you can see what they've been doing. But there's a bunch of universities and other associations like the American Medical Students Association and all these other professional associations that support that type of bill, as they should. And like I said before, a lot of provisions are expiring, so immediate action is needed. And you definitely want to stress that, like, you know, there's still time. And they're going to be coming back in November. And they're going to be dealing with some tax incentive issues. So, you know, if we can still get some co-sponsors on these bills, especially the tax incentive bills, that will just make the whole job easier next year because they will get reintroduced. And if they don't get dealt with this fall, it's going to be something retroactive next year. I'm going to talk to people about that. So we want as many co-sponsors as possible, even if they don't get passed. And let's hope they do. So the last issue, graduate student loans. This is this issue we don't exactly have specific bills for. I do have 3 bills. I do have 3 bills listed on the event webpage, and they're dealing with bankruptcy provisions for graduate student loans and how those are taxed if you get those loans taken away. You go through bankruptcy proceedings, but we didn't have time to actually look through those in depth, so I didn't create any issue papers on it. If you do want to feel comfortable talking about that, you can look at those tonight. The links are on the event page. But graduate student loans that's an issue that I've seen this last year. People personally contacted me at the Legislative Concerns Chair as one of the most important issues facing graduate and professional students. Loan debt is huge coming out of undergrad, gets bigger in graduate school, especially if you don't have guaranteed funding from an outside fellowship or even from your own professor. You know, a lot of budgets are contracting in states, so the universities are not getting as much money. That means less money for TA ships, and that gets, you know, applied to not only humanities, but I mean, it does go into sciences as well, depending on the university's research budget. So graduate student loans are a vehicle that we're using to get through this hard time, and we definitely want them to support, you know, all these various things. And those, you know, there's some specific asks, you know, about increasing federal loan assistance for graduate students, supporting the two kind of loan, we call it remittance, but it gets rid of your loans in the federal public service loan forgiveness programs, where if you do a certain amount of public service, they'll forgive your loan amounts after 10 years. You're still paying off your graduate loans after that time, but usually if you're in these two combined plans, income-based repayment and the other one, you're doing income-based repayment, so you're not paying more than 15% of your income to your graduate or your student loan payments. So that might not even cover your actual payments. So your loan might keep on building, but then at the end of the period working, it would actually get forgiven. So there's programs out there currently. We definitely want them to have continued support, because some of those do have sunset clauses, and all these other talking points in the beginning you can bring up in a meeting. And here's some more. Lower interest rates, definitely would like to have, and the interest rates currently for graduate student loans and undergraduate student loans are not on parity, and maybe that should change. You might want to bring that up. Reducing loan rates will definitely help people pursue graduate education, especially if they don't have, you know, if they're not from the best background and they don't have access to, you know, secure funding. It might be a good vehicle to do that if you can't get scholarships and fellowships. So don't empower everybody to pursue that graduate degree if they really choose to. And access to affordable loans and modeling graduate professional loans to match the time degree is also very important. Currently, graduate student loans, I think, are timed to like a 4-year time span, and we all know that that's not necessarily the case, especially for a PhD. It might be the case for a professional degree program, but there's a lot of, there's not a finite time span that it's really dependent on your advisor and whatnot. So matching loans to the time degree would be very important. And you know, the U.S. does benefit from qualified researchers, educators, medical doctors, and everything. You can talk about specifically the impact that graduate students have on maybe in STEM fields, creating companies in your local economy. In UCSD, it's an easy for us because we can talk about the biomedical field around the area that's really been started because of UCSD, and also aerospace and whatnot. So look at the sectors, you know, that graduate students are really affecting in your area, and you can kind of use that as a talking point when you're asking for stuff like lower loan rates and tax incentives. And that's pretty much it. You can open up for questions, and that's my contact information. It's also on the website. And if you guys are, you know, I encourage you guys to, you know, Google these various issues and find out, you know, people's different positions tonight, and kind of do your own research like we talked about before, and that'll kind of inform you. It doesn't have to be super long, but just getting well versed with the issue is important when you're tackling a lobby visit. You don't want to be, you know, silent on the matter if they ask you a question. So we didn't talk about this, but timing on a lobby visit, we're going to do 3 issues, the 3 main issue areas: tax incentives, graduate student loans, FERPA. Usually you're going to take about maybe 5 to 7 minutes to discuss each issue. You allow for a little bit of questions, like 1 to 2 minutes, so your full visit's about 25 minutes. And so for timing, you know, that would work out. And also, if you have multiple people in your delegation, you can assign the issue that the person likes the best, basically, or the person is most comfortable with. So definitely plan for the strong suits of who's in your delegation, and split up the talking, and have someone take notes, if possible, in the meeting, not just afterwards. So that's about it. We're gonna. Well, I'll take questions. Yes.
10 to 4, and then the itinerary called for a luncheon in the lobby area. Does everyone
So yeah, so that's kind of very unstructured, but there is a big cafeteria and